Hello YouTube. As some of you have probably been guessing with my recent coverage on the channel, I've been replaying Oblivion in the past couple of months, and today I want to talk about another character from that game, the fan favorite leader of the Blades, Grandmaster Jauffre. What do we know of his backstory? What did he do while we were having missions in the game? Let's talk about it after the intro. So, Grandmaster Jauffre, from the outside an unassuming monk, but secretly the Grandmaster of the Blades organization by the end of the Third Era and beginning of the Fourth Era. As such, he was the one ultimately responsible for protecting the lost Septim Emperors, and he was the head of the Empire's intelligence network at this time, as the Blades, who were loyal exclusively to the Dragonborn Emperors of Tamriel, fulfilled the role of the Empire's intelligence service as well during this time. Of Jauffre's early years we know precious little. All that we know is that as a Blade he was able to rise through the ranks rather quickly, as it seems that when Jauffre was most likely in his late 20s, early 30s, around the time that Jauffre Tharn, the antagonist of the Elder Scrolls 1 Arena, was defeated, and Emperor Uriel Septim VII was freed from his Oblivion prison, Jauffre was seemingly promoted to head of Uriel Septim VII's palace guard. It's quite likely that after Tharn's betrayal and his 10 years imprisonment at Tharn's hands, Uriel decided to wipe the slate clean, so to say, and fire a lot of those Blades who had served in high ranks during the 10 years that Tharn had been Shadow Emperor and he had been locked away in Oblivion. So it's most likely that at this time, 34 years before our playtime in the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, Jauffre was promoted to head of the palace guard. Probably replacing the previous office holder because, well, he didn't notice that his emperor had been locked up and replaced by Jauffre Tharn. Now, it's in this role that the then Captain Jauffre had a lot of personal contact with Emperor Uriel Septim VII, and the two ended up forming a strong bond of trust and a friendship that would last until the time that both were old men. As one of Emperor Uriel Septim's closest confidants, Jauffre seems to have known about the Emperor's unhappy marriage to Empress Kala Voria, and as one of the Emperor's most trusted, he was the only one to be trusted with the knowledge of the Emperor's bastard son Martin's existence. In fact, it's Jauffre who tells us that during his time as captain of the palace guard, he was one night called into Emperor Uriel's private chambers, where the old Emperor handed Jauffre a sleeping baby boy in a basket. The Emperor then tasked Jauffre to bring the baby somewhere safe, where he could grow up as a happy child, somewhere far away from the palace. Jauffre says to us that the Emperor told him nothing more than that, but that he knew that it was the Emperor's son. Jauffre then took the child into the night and found a farm near Kavach, where he deemed that the inhabitants of the farm were worthy of giving Martin a happy childhood. He then put the basket with the child on their doorstep and disappeared into the night, making sure that neither the child nor his foster parents would ever learn the truth about his biological parents. Over the years, Emperor Uriel would ask Jauffre to check in on the boy every now and then, to see if he was still being treated right probably, and whether he was healthy and how he progressed as a person. Eventually, after years as the commander of the Emperor's bodyguard unit, Jauffre would be promoted from the captain of the palace guard to Grandmaster of the Blades, with Captain Ranald, who we see in the beginning of the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, taking over his role as captain of the palace guard. Jauffre served as Grandmaster of the Blades for a long time actively, but eventually he took steps back from leading the Blades day to day and started spending a lot of time in a new undercover identity as a monk in Wayne Priory, as a sort of pseudo-retirement, as he kept the title of Grandmaster, but only seemingly made decisions over big and important stuff in person at their headquarters, while the day-to-day operations of the organization were overseen by other commanders, which does not seem like a strange thing, as he says himself that many Blades, even high-ranking ones, are permanently undercover and don't serve the Emperor openly. Still, this seemed like a little pseudo-retirement, as when we find Jauffre in the game at Wayne Priory, he is already of quite an advanced age. Not as old as Emperor Uriel Septim, but definitely getting on in years. Anyway, we as the player find him at the opening days of the Oblivion crisis, as gates to Oblivion start opening all across Tamriel and Daedra start killing indiscriminately after the Emperor and all his heirs were assassinated, and the dragonfires in the Temple of the One were extinguished for the first time in hundreds of years, as there was no legitimate Septim heir to relight them and protect Nirn from Oblivion. Jauffre was probably in mourning over the death of his old friend, but he immediately returned to active duty as open leader of the Blades when we bring him the Amulet of Kings, the King's Jewel of the Empire needed to relight the dragonfires by a legitimate Dragonborn Emperor. At this point, Jauffre is the only one who knows what needs to be done, With all the Emperor's sons dead, there's but one left who can relight the dragon fires, and he is the only one who knows of his existence. The bastard son, Martin Septim. So he and the player then plan to bring the Emperor's bastard son, Martin, to Cloud Ruler Temple, the Blades' base of operations where Martin will be relatively safe, so that they could protect the lost living Septim and perhaps save the Empire in the long run. So you as the player go and get Martin, while Jauffre presumably starts making plans and sends messages across Tamriel to the Blades for mobilization while keeping the Amulet of Kings safe. Unfortunately, this turned out not to be the brightest idea, as we the player probably should have kept the Amulet of Kings with us, since by the time we get back to Jauffre with Martin, Wayne Priory is under attack by the Mythic Dawn, the Daedric cult of Mehrunes Dagon, who started the entire crisis and are now the antagonists of the game. When we arrived, they were trying to take out Jauffre and steal the Amulet of Kings. Fortunately, they did not succeed in killing Jauffre, but unfortunately, they did succeed in stealing the Amulet of Kings. Now, despite this setback, Jauffre and the player bring Martin Septim back to Cloud Ruler Temple, and Jauffre had already sent the message ahead, and thus by the time of their arrival, the three receive a hero's welcome. Now, the player then officially gets accepted into the Blades, and Jauffre, Martin and the player then start to work against the Mythic Dawn in order to end the Oblivion crisis. And it's from that point on that Jauffre and the player's path mostly diverges, as Jauffre stays at Martin's side and the player goes out to do most of the field work. They conspire to take back the Amulet of Kings from the Mythic Dawn, so that with Martin's dragon blood and the amulet, Martin can reseal the barrier between Nirn and Oblivion by relighting the dragon fires. Meanwhile, in the story from that point on, he mostly takes a supporting role, while you and Martin do most of the heavy lifting. He will give you some tasks as your Grandmaster, and he goes where Martin goes, sworn to protect him from anything. As such, he takes part in the defense of Bruma, helps Martin open a portal to Mankar Cameron's Paradise Realm, and he is there to help escort Martin to the Imperial city at the story's climax, when Martin would be crowned Emperor, were it not for Mehrunes Dagon besieging the city himself. In fact, it was apparently Jauffre who sent the message ahead to the Other Council and contacted the head of the Other Council, Chancellor Okato, about Martin's existence, facilitating a possible quick crowning ceremony. But alas, it was not to be, as in the end Martin, the last of the Septim dynasty, was forced to sacrifice himself to protect the mortal plane against the forces of Oblivion, as Mehrunes Dagon had sent an avatar of himself into the mortal plane, and the only way left to stop him would be for Martin to shatter the Amulet of Kings and become an avatar of Akatosh, beating Mehrunes Dagon back into Oblivion and sealing the barriers between Nirn and Oblivion forever, supposedly, although at the cost of the last living Septim that we know of. Now, Jauffre would later remark that Martin may be the greatest of the Septim Emperors for a sacrifice, and he would hold him dear forever. Now, what happened to Jauffre himself after the Oblivion crisis is unknown, but we do know that about 40 years later, during the Elder Scrolls novels, he seemingly no longer leads them. For his sake, I hope that he died rather quickly and peacefully within like 5 years of the story of Oblivion, as after about 5 years shit starts hitting the fan again on Tamriel, but ultimately we don't even know anything. It's possible that he somehow still lives by the time of the novels and just stepped down as Grandmaster into a, real retirement, but we simply don't know, and it would simply just be speculation at that point. Anyway, that's about all I can say about Grandmaster Jauffre, and I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this video. If you want to know some more Oblivion lore, I put more Oblivion lore in the description. Among other things, the other children of Uriel Septim himself, and probably some other videos that will come in the coming week, which I will all put in the description. It's been a fun game to replay. Anyway, I hope I managed to teach you something new about the Elder Scrolls lore today, and if I did, why not give the video a like? Because that's how YouTube decides which content is worthy and which isn't. Anyway, all that's left for me to be done is to thank my top Patreon supporters, Mr. Bernardo Binda, Gabriel Binda, Doji, Hunter Joe, KLegendM, King Chris 20, RB Dash, Volkure of Argonia, Devin Mattingly, Rakai and Sordo Bushido. These people, along with all the others on screen, keep my channel afloat, and for that I am very grateful. That said, I will see you all in the next Elder Scrolls lore video, probably next week, although for this one, probably a little earlier.